one of the great seasons in my book. Not this book necessarily, but
another
in my view.
book.
It's so good they ought to probably make a film about it.
From Autosport.com and Autosport Magazine, I'm Kevin Turner, and this is the Autosport Podcast. Well, welcome to the latest episode of our run through the 100 greatest Grand Prix in World Championship history, based on this book that Roger Smith and myself have put together. Roger, welcome back. How's it going so far? Do you think with this series we're doing all right? I think
we're doing fine. I mean, there are three aspects of this book. The first of all, the selection of races. Then there's grouping the races into the themes, which are the chapters of the book. And then finally, there's ranking.
Which is the hardest bit. It gets progressively harder as you go through those three segments, really.
It certainly does. But I think the selection has gone down well. I think it's possibly with grouping and ranking that people find a bit more discussion.
Yes. Well, obviously, this isn't our 100 greatest, is it? It's kind of the 10 greatest in individual categories, which isn't quite the same thing. But helping us pick this apart in this episode is Damien Smith, author, journalist, all-round top man. He's probably going to take our list apart. How are you doing, Damien? Welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be back, and thank you for having me. Yes.
No, this should be good, and feel free to disagree with our selections.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, this episode is sort of a what the hell, isn't it? Really, a bizarre happenings races, and so I think unlike some of the other ones, Roger, where they're kind of fairly neatly, they're great performances, aren't they? Like either by one or multiple drivers. That does come into this, but this is also some kind of just drama, crazy, oh my god, I can't believe that happened type races, aren't they?
They are. Some might unkindly call them wacky races, where there's a sort of disruptor element to them. It's often rain, but it can be accidents, crashes, reliability, various things that sort of trigger a set of circumstances that happen and makes them into rather special races and very well-remembered races.
Yeah, that's the point, isn't it, Damien? You can have races that are great races without necessarily a great performance if there's lots of drama, excitement and crazy stuff happening, which is kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, a great race could be the two best drivers in the world having a tense battle that doesn't actually go wheel to wheel at any time, but they remain like 2 seconds apart throughout the whole race. I would say that's a great race, even if nothing much happens between them.
Yes,
but obviously here,
quality.
Yes, but here we're talking about things with crazy events and they're always welcome, aren't they? Whenever they arrive, they're usually, every once in a blue moon, and shake things up a bit.
And as we'll see in this list, it often, not always, but often produces an unusual winner or surprise winner,
which is always good fun.
Which is quite good fun. We like a bit of randomness. I think that's one of the reasons that people are upset about the lack of unreliability these days, because every now and again you want someone random to win a race.
Yeah, I was thinking that watching this season just gone, and obviously Lando Norris had that Zandvoort retirement, but that was the sort of thing that would happen 4 or 5 times a season for most drivers.
I thought you were going to say 4 or 5 times a race, but I suppose it depends which era you're
going back to.
Well, there were those races as well.
First turbo era.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's get into this. The first one is actually a fairly recent one. Number 10 is the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. So what are the standout moments for you, Roger, to put this one in the list? Obviously, this is Esteban Ocon's so far one and only World Championship Grand Prix win.
Yes. So I think what the applies to this particular race.
Multiple words could be used in the space. Yeah.
Yes. And the big what the moment was Lewis Hamilton starting on his own from pole. But what led up to that was the situation where Bottas had got his braking wrong. He crashed into other cars at the turn one.
Lando Norris's McLaren then fired into one of the Red Bulls and it all kicked off. And Lance Stroll also triggered more craziness.
I think both Red Bulls were out, a couple of other front runners, and it left, and there was a red flag, and it was wet. Initially, I think the track was wet. I don't think it was raining, but it was very wet. But the sun came out, and one knows that when at the Hungaroring, when the sun comes out, it can get burning hot, and the track quickly began to dry, such that when they went out after the red flag, they suddenly realised they were on the wrong tyres with intermediates, and they needed to get to slicks. And the whole field, bar Lewis,
who was on pole, which is probably why he didn't do that.
Yes, he didn't do it, presumably, because he was concerned that if he made the pit stop, he was going to, sort of run into traffic or not come out as he wished to. So he went. He made the start alone, and Ocon managed to climb from. Well, he got to P1 by as early as lap 5, and held it from that time on.
Well, he was helped by George Russell's cheeky, just overtaking everyone in the pit lane, and then them getting on the radio going,
Oh, yes.
you can't actually do that. But because the Williams that year wasn't very good, so to see a Williams at the front of the field was pretty interesting as well. But yeah, so I mean, Damien, the two things that stand out to me for this race, one is obviously Ocon. We hadn't really seen him running at the front of a Grand Prix before, and he had Sebastian Vettel, obviously veteran, multiple champion, right behind. You think, is he going to be able to hold on? So that was one, but also it was the old masters, Fernando Alonso effectively winning the race for Ocon by halting Lewis Hamilton's charge through the field.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think there was always one of those days when the likes of Alonso shine in one way or another, and Ocon, as you say, led from early on actually, and he's that kind of Grand Prix driver. I'm really pleased he won a Grand Prix.
Yeah, absolutely.
He probably isn't going to win another one. He might do, but it's hard to see right now how he's going to get there. But it also was a performance I thought that suggested if he had ended up in a Mercedes at some point, which looked like it might happen, he would have been another Bottas. I think he would have been that kind of level. I think he would have won multiple Grand Prix and would have had a very different trajectory. As it didn't work out that way for him, but at least he's got that day. He'll always have that day.
Yeah, and on the Alonso thing, 11 laps, I think it was 10, 11 laps he kept Hamilton behind. But he did it in a way that I thought, because I watched it again the other day, was fair. Like, there wasn't any of this kind of running people off the road. He just knew exactly where to put his car all the time. Obviously, in the end, Hamilton forced him into a mistake, went past and went charging off.
But you're right. It was fair.
It was
driving,
just brilliant racing between the two of them.
That made it, 11 laps. It's a heck of a bit of defence.
It's a circuit where if you do drive neatly and tidily, and you know as well as Fernando Alonso does, it's going to always be very hard to overtake there, isn't it? And it always think about the Hungaroring, that when it first arrived in the mid '80s, people were very dismissive of it as a Mickey Mouse track, and it was very slow and not very inspiring. And these days, it's sort of seen as a classic old school circuit, isn't it? How funny how perspectives change.
Yeah, that's true.
But it does always tend to trigger a good race, whether it's in the dry or the rain. You don't usually get a dull Hungarian Grand Prix.
It has had a surprising number of good races. Actually, we could do a data analysis of how many times various tracks have as featured in the book. I might do a spin-off article or something like that at some point. But well, let's move on to another race that Vettel played a big part. I mean, in this case, I would suggest he was the guilty party. So number 9 is the 2010 Turkish Grand Prix. That's another good track, I would say, of the modern era that we don't go to at the moment. Now, this was before it became clear that Vettel was going to be the dominant force at Red Bull. I would argue Mark Webber was still very much going toe-to-toe to him. And Roger, I think the fight for the lead came to a head with Vettel trying to come past.
So you're right. You're right to mention that background, that they came into this race level on points, and Webber on pole as well, and he led the race, and looked as though he was going to sort of just shoo it in, and they asked him to turn down his engine. Now that's the key element, I think, in this, really, because it allowed Vettel, who I think had to make up a couple of places, to get behind and then close the gap to Webber, and one assumed that he too would turn his engine down and they'd go in tandem to the end. But of course he didn't. On that 40 he attacked out of 58 laps, and they collided. Basically Webber just held his line, and they hit one another.
I think you're being generous, Roger. Vettel turned right and took them both off, only very slightly. But again, I watched this quite a lot, and my view of the time has not changed in the subsequent 15 years. Is that Seb was just edged right too soon.
Yeah.
Which actually we saw him do a few years later with Charles Leclerc in Brazil, didn't we? Just a slight misjudgment. I don't think he was deliberately trying to create an incident, but he was obviously a bit. Well, what was your read of it, Damien?
Yeah, I agree with you, Kev. I think he was. I wouldn't say he's as ruthless as Max Verstappen is today, but Vettel was always hard-nosed in battle, and at times I think he overstepped it. I think that was an occasion where he was the one at fault. You remember him walking away, making the sound, the finger at the
crazy sound,
the crazy thing.
Gesture.
Yeah, and I thought, yeah, you're the one who's crazy, mate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, is this an early example of Red Bull not actually get on top of a protege? They didn't criticise him. In fact, I think Marco even kind of hinted it was Webber's fault.
Yeah, and it was that whole paranoia was setting in that Webber had, that he was the number 2, and the favoured son was always Vettel. And this was where that kind of started to really grab hold. There's so many parallels with Oscar Piastri and Mark Webber, his manager. I'm sure, Piastri, there's that feeling of, is Piastri number 2 at McLaren? Is Lando Norris the Vettel, the favoured son of the team? And I think it's Mark lived through that with Vettel, and he's almost like he's going through it again as a manager.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like he's almost produced by that, rather than being reality. I mean, we probably won't know.
This is it. I'm not saying it is reality.
I don't think that it is.
It might actually be perception, and the racing drivers, we know they're very, very sensitive, and if they feel any sense that there's a favouritism within the team, perceived reality, whatever it is, it can eat away at them, and it can, it has big effects, and it certainly did for Mark Webber.
Mark Webber's autobiography, which is actually quite a good read, isn't it?
It's really good, yeah.
Very good read.
Yeah.
And he says that was the time that he understood that Red Bull did not want to have an Australian, a washed-up Aussie dog leading the championship or winning the championship.
I mean, it's a great line. Whether it's true or not is another matter. But
well, that's real paranoia if it's not true.
We should mention the reason that I think this is in this list because of the fight between the McLarens.
Yeah.
That's the quality part. We've had the drama, but actually the fight between Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button for the win was everything that the fight between the Red Bull drivers wasn't it?
Showed them how to do it. Actually.
Exactly, yes.
And
I think that in part Ferme afterwards, because Hamilton sort of wins it, but Jenson got ahead briefly, and he gets out and you're not sure, I don't think Hamilton's quite sure what to make of it, and Jenson goes up and does the arm around the shoulders, that was really good, and then Lewis is like, oh yeah, we're all right.
Yeah.
So that totally different contrasting atmospheres between the two sets of teammates.
Fantastic partnership.
Yeah, brilliant.
Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton. I think Lewis learned an awful lot from Jenson about how to work within a team, how to conduct himself, and Jenson surprised him by being as close to him as he was for most of that time they were together.
And so number 8, the 2003 Australian Grand Prix. This one, Roger, this really is a crazy race. I had to watch this again because I can't remember this, and the reason I couldn't remember it is because everything happens all at once. There's cars in the wall, there's dry tyres, wet. We've got Michelins and Bridgestones. It's a crazy. It really is a crazy race.
It is, and it starts with a scrambled grid because they had the one-time qualifying system, and I think that was part of the reason why things were mixed up. But there was a wet track as well. Rain comes into
wet but drying, which we always
wet
like.
But drying,
go from one to the other.
And the first 20 laps were absolutely breathtaking because you had 3 contenders: Schumacher, Montoya, and Raikkonen, really sort of hammering around, trying to sort of get into a winning situation. But at different times in the race, they all made mistakes, and particularly Montoya, who of course spins out with 11 laps to go.
Well, we should say yes. So Montoya started on slicks for Williams, but Michelin's. I had to write some of this down because I couldn't remember all this. It's too crazy. So Mark Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello and the Ferraris, the Bridgestones on the wets, and they disappeared early on, but they stayed out too long before changing slicks. Barrichello crashed anyway. DC also pitted early, which was basically the right thing to do, is to be on slicks later on. Schumacher also had a slow stop, which is quite unusual for Ross Brawn era Ferrari, wasn't it? And then so it looked like it was going to be Montoya leading from Coulthard, trying to close him down, but Damien did make one of those mistakes, Montoya, and I suppose that's one of the things that made him an exciting F1 driver. You're never quite sure what you were going to get with him.
No, and that's why he was so popular, I think, at the time, and he was a breath of fresh air, really. In an era we really needed a hero, didn't we? A little bit, because it was, Schumacher was so dominant for big chunks of that era, and I think Montoya and Raikkonen emerging at that same time. It was the challengers we finally needed. I think it was a good time.
Yeah, it was the same race as Roger alluded to. Raikkonen and Schumacher went to the first corner side by side, and Michael was shown the grass. Although actually, looking at it, it's not a barging him off the track. It's I'm leaving you sort of enough room if you want to get out of it. So again, it was hard. I'd say it was just about hard but fair, rather than perhaps some of the things that we've seen subsequently. And he's a fair driver, I think.
Yes, I'd agree. Absolutely. Yeah, he was always. Everyone always said they trusted him going wheel to wheel with him, didn't they? So
yeah,
it was Coulthard's final win, amassing 13, as we know, which is quite a substantial record.
And he was actually last at the end of lap 2.
He was last at the end of lap 2,
which is always fun.
And he didn't make any mistakes and came through to win.
Another occasion, if Coulthard could have been that person every week, it would have been a different story. I think he deserves a lot more credit than he gets, and he's very self-deprecating about his own career now.
Is he?
Yeah, he is. He really is, and he's quite humble, and but I think actually he talks himself down a little bit. I think, there were days he had those days when he was, just as good as.
French Grand Prix in 2000, for example. He had Hakkinen tucked up all weekend, beat Schumacher in a wheel-to-wheel fight. Well, all of them so far have been in the 21st century. So going back a bit further for number 7, 1978 South African Grand Prix at Carl Army. Now, this race had 5 different leaders, Roger.
Yep.
Although the one that led the least was the winner at the end, which is, and it's really the last. I suppose, although it did have 5, it's really the last lap or two, isn't it, that gets into this list?
It is.
It could have been in the dramatic finishes episode.
Yes, it could have gone there, but to a certain extent, there is a bit of a what if moment earlier on, and that is Patrese looking as though he's going to win in an Arrows, and then Depailler coming through as well later on when Patrese went out in the comparatively new, was that the 007 tour? I think it might have been.
The
4-wheel,
the 008.
The one after the
008.
And the 6-wheeler.
After the 6-wheeler, yes, coming through as well. But as you say, it was the last lap when Depailler, the engine coughed or something. He sort of lost a bit of, short of fuel, and Peterson went for him, and they banged wheels in an exciting way, which didn't seem at the time dangerous. It was a bit like the Arnoux Villeneuve sort of banging wheels, where you thought they both knew exactly what was going on, and they were trying to be fair. They were just racing very hard. There was no pushing off or anything.
No, I didn't come across any coverage that suggested it was too much. But yeah, so Mario Andretti led for Lotus early on. Then Jody Scheckter, they both hit tyre troubles. Then Riccardo Patrese. I'm sure I've seen or heard someone from Arrows saying, well, if you'd heard the way he was revving the engine, it was no surprise, because this was young.
Oh, really?
This was young Patrese.
Yeah.
This isn't the sort of veteran Italian that we got to sort of know and love later on, but I think he was driving it pretty hard, and the engine broke. And then also you had Ronnie Peterson coming through. Any objection, Damo, to any of the selections so far in the list, or the wrong order for these 4 so far?
No, no objection. There is we were talking pre-podcast about some races, and there's one in particular. Well, maybe I'll save it for a bit later. But
okay,
there's one that I think we were talking about should be in this list.
Right, number 6. Now this is going to take some discussing, because I've tried to do a lot of research about this to find out what the actual rules were at the time. And as Autosport pointed out at the time, nobody knew. They were so vaguely written, nobody knew the actual rule. But this is the 1976 British Grand Prix. So, Roger, I'll let you explain the basics, and then we'll get into the ins and outs of the rules.
This is one where I was there. So
excellent,
and I was watching from a.
Were you one of those clapping?
I led it.
Well, I have to blame you then for the rowdy British crowd.
Well, I must say it came across in a way, the tannoy telling us that sort of Hunt wasn't going to restart and so on. It was really quite irritating, to say the least, because it was the Ferraris that had caused all the problem in the first place. Anyway, we got the result, and that's why it's a what the, because the result came 9 weeks later after it all went to Paris and the FIA and it was looked at as a protest. But basically the Ferraris clashed at Paddock Hill
Well,
Bend.
Clay Regazzoni put his car into a space that didn't exist alongside Nicky Lauda's his teammate.
And there was
hit him.
utter bedlam. Hunt's car was damaged, and as I have alluded to, there was people power that got him back into the race. Now, as far as the rules and regulations are concerned, I think at the time that the understanding was that he hadn't completed the first lap in the car, so he was prevented from restarting. Does anyone know?
Yeah, no driver may restart unless his car had completed the red flag lap.
Yeah.
Because he cuts across where the Indy circuit is, rather than doing the full Grand Prix loop. Isn't that right?
Not sure if he cut it. I think he may have done it.
I think that's why he didn't complete the lap.
He did, but he was also running at the time of the red flag. Technically, he was still in motion, I believe. Ferrari, so they put Regazzoni in the spare car. So while all this argument's going on, McLaren actually managed to fix Hunt's car. Right. So he went in his original car, whereas Regazzoni and one of the other guys involved in the crash.
So I remember talking to Alistair Caldwell about this.
Yes.
And when the fans all started to jeer and all the stuff started to...
We didn't throw anything.
You didn't throw anything.
Well, I didn't. I don't think anyone did.
Is that a fallacy then? Did you not see that at all?
I don't. What was thrown?
Well, they always say that cans were thrown on the track and debris and stuff.
I'm not sure I saw that.
I must admit, the footage I looked at the other day, there was definitely clapping and sort of boos and jeers, but I don't remember seeing anything flying onto the track.
No, I don't remember.
Caldwell said that the McLaren guys, they all started to stir it to basically give themselves more time to fix James's car. So,
which they did to some effect, because in the race, it actually could have been one of our duels, Roger.
Yeah.
Because Hunt chases Lauda for lap after lap after lap and eventually gets him into Druids. I think the Ferrari does start to have some transmission problem, and James wins on the road pretty easily.
But I mean, that's right. When the race actually began, it was a terrific duel. Absolutely super. And it was what we come for, and that's why we were a bit upset that it wasn't what we were going to get if Hunt didn't restart.
And let's face it, he was disqualified on a technicality, and everyone knows that James Hunt won the 1976 British Grand Prix.
Ferrari's arguments was that the mechanics had touched the car before the race had been stopped, which McLaren absolutely denied.
Yeah.
Autosport's take on it, which I thought was quite interesting, was that the Commission Sportive Internationale, which we would effectively call the FIA now, wouldn't we, threw Hunt out because it realised he had made the wrong decision about the Spanish Grand Prix. Because if you remember, he was thrown out for the car being too wide. McLaren came up with something about the bulge in the tyres, and they got reinstated. That was a nonsense because the car was illegal. And they went, how do we correct this? We can't review our own decision from before, so we'll correct it now.
I wonder if that's true.
It'd be great to know, wouldn't it? Because in my view, the British Grand Prix result should have stood, and the Spanish Grand Prix one probably shouldn't. Yes. So the point score was sort of evened up. But it was a shame because it was such a good drive, wasn't it? It was probably one of Hunt's best, actually.
Yeah. Well, it was always lovely that the year after at Silverstone, he did win the British Grand Prix, and that one he got to keep. That was a real sort of vindication, retribution, whatever you like. I think I was talking to Maurice Hamilton about that season as well, and he was at in Canada, and obviously that was the race where beforehand he found out that he'd lost the British Grand Prix. It had been taken off him, and he and Lauda briefly fell out.
They did, yes. Yeah.
Only briefly, but they did fall out over that time. There was a lot of press for revving
but also Ferrari and McLaren hated each other.
Exactly.
More than Lauda and Hunt did. It was more of a team thing, wasn't it?
But Maurice Hamilton always said that the Canada race was Hunt at his best. And he was obviously revved up, and he won that one very.
But a sensational season, 1976.
Yeah,
one of the great seasons in my book. Not this book necessarily, but
another
in my view.
Book.
It's so good they would probably make a film about it.
Well, that's halfway through. We've done 10 to 6, so let's get on into the top 5. I would argue that James Hunt's a bit underrated by history, and I'm going to go and say that the person that should have won the 1964 Belgian Grand Prix is also a bit underrated. Maybe not in the States, but certainly in Europe. Dan Gurney. Autosport really waxed lyrical, actually, about Gurney's performance at the 64 Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. I mean, he is head and shoulders above everyone else, isn't he, Roger? And this is not a weak field we're talking about.
Yeah. And there'd been Brabham had difficulties in getting Gurney across the line, hadn't they? There'd been all sorts of times when he might have won and hadn't.
It should have been in the 64 title fight, actually, Gurney, yeah.
Yeah. And he was leading with 2 laps to go, and he pitted for fuel. And I think this was the occasion where nobody sort of had any fuel to give him.
What do you want?
do
The
you
race
want?
finished, yeah. Yes, pit stops were not quite so well driven.
So he was dominating the race, and unfortunately, he was never going to win once he made that stop. It allowed Graham Hill in, but and we're in the last 2 laps of this race, of course, and this is at the old Spa. So you've got Hill having fuel pump trouble on the last lap. And so McLaren takes over.
Bruce McLaren in the Cooper, yeah.
In the Cooper. And his battery dies at La Source. And he's in a position where he can run down the hill. He's just got about enough momentum to get round the Source and start running down the hill. But then suddenly, 100 yards from the finish, there's a flash of green and yellow, and Jim Clark storms by to win. And of course, Jim lost so many races. It was one of those ones where he sort of picked one up for free, as it were. But he immediately ran out of fuel there himself, and he pitted earlier in the race as well. So I mean, the fact that he was coming from behind and making up time was all part of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a rare case of a Jim Clark lucky win. In fact, it's pretty much the only one I can think of, because he was normally the one out front, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, and as Roger says, he lost a lot through reliability problems himself. So, maybe there's some sort of element of karma that one came back to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, although John Surtees in the Ferrari had problems early on, and this I would suggest would be one of those races, because he got. I remember interviewing him about 64 and saying, "Oh, everyone thinks that." Jim was unlucky at the end because of what happened in Mexico City. I had all my bad luck at the start of the season, losing loads of points, and I think this is probably one of those races you could point to. Not only did he lose loads of points, but Clark inherited a maximum in the last 200 or 300 yards. Interestingly, I did find a couple of different accounts that suggested it could have been out of fuel for the Cooper or a dead battery. So I don't know. I don't know if I suspect that's probably lost in the midst of time. Now, I don't suppose you've ever come across anyone on your travels, Damien, that would have. Been able to confirm. It's a little bit too long ago, isn't it?
A long time ago. No, I haven't got anything to add on that one. But I'm always interested in Gurney at Brabham in that era, because if things had gone on slightly differently for him, maybe he wouldn't have gone off to make Eagle in '66, and maybe he'd have still been at Brabham in '66 when we had to change to 3 litres and Jack got it absolutely bang on with the Repco engine. Maybe Dan Gurney would have been a double world champion in '66 and '67.
I think he probably would have been. I think Jack even said in his autobiography that was the first time he was prepared to retire, because obviously he was running the team. Gurney was consistently quicker than Brabham when they were teammates, and he was like, okay, well, I've got a number 1 driver, I can concentrate on running Brabham. Happy days. And then Dan went, no, actually, I'm going to go off. So it's probably nicer for motorsport history that he did that, because obviously everyone loves the Eagle.
Yes.
And obviously he got his Belgian Grand Prix win 3 years later with the Eagle.
Yeah.
But also it would be nice to have Dan Gurney as a world champion, wouldn't it?
It would. But then the regeneration of Jack Brabham as well is a great story.
Yeah, that's true.
From '66. So
Yeah. Let's get on. So that was only crazy, really, the last 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah, last 2 laps.
This next one, number 4, the 1975 British Grand Prix at Silverstone. God, I don't know where to start with this. Well, I'll tell you what, Roger, why don't you start? Which bit do you want to pick out?
I was there again.
Were you? So you got pretty wet this day.
I did.
It depends where you were standing, I suppose.
It was fairly miserable, but at the same time, it was not sustained rain. It was coming across Silverstone in waves, and it was very localized. So you could have wet at one corner and dry at another. So it's very tricky for the drivers. And there was a sort of chaotic early period, as I recall it, where due to sort of people making jar swaps at different times because of the was it wet or was it dry situation. Everyone had 7 different race leaders, so trying to keep my lap chart was not easy.
You're trying to keep a lap chart. Where were you stood?
I did it. I think I was at Copse.
Okay, so you would have been able to see the cars coming out of the pit lane, then that would have given you half a chance. If you were elsewhere around the track, you'd have had no chance at all.
And I always did lap charts, and you get quite good at them in the end if you sort of keep at it. And and you need them sometimes.
I still do it now, even though there's
to just sometimes know what's going on, and that was one of those races. But there was quite a bit of local British excitement because Tom Price led some of the race, and
From
also
pole.
from pole. Oh yes, that's right, from pole. And James Hunt also featured, but it was lap 56 when perhaps it was more than just a localized bit of rain, and 12 cars went out, and 8 of them were at club. It's been interesting to see what it was like down there, and actually you can see, because there's a fantastic picture of absolute carnage at club in the book, with cars, all piled up.
Well, Jody Scheckter said something. We did a piece on this race earlier in the year. Paul Fernley did some interviews for us, and Jody Scheckter said that there was new surface down at some parts, and he thought that it had a slightly odd surface, maybe because it was still fairly new, in that when it rained a bit, the water just disappeared and you had loads of grip. It was great, and then it reached a saturation point where it just sat on the surface, and so when you arrived, you just were a powerboat. And everyone went. I had no chance, really. I mean, what's your main sort of takeaway from this race, Damien? It shows the craziness and lack of readiness on pit stops as well, I suppose.
Yeah, I was at that sort of time when Formula One teams weren't really equipped for what was thrown at them. So yeah, it's one of the most memorable sort of Silverstone moments, isn't it? That in the catch fence in the picture you've got there, Roger.
Yeah.
Yes, that complete.
I think
complete
you're right
chaos.
to mention the catch fencing, because I mean it's not. It may have done some catching, but at the same time, it had some downsides, didn't it? When you see the tangled mess.
Well,
So, as a child I was born in the early 70s, so I grew up watching motor racing during the catch fencing era, and never questioned it. It seemed like a completely sensible thing to have, basically wire fencing with posts, wooden posts, just to catch racing cars. Can you think about it now?
I mean, I watched some footage of this race, and I was telling my wife, who thought wooden posts and catch fencing was a good idea? Because you either got caught in the fencing itself, or there are a few drivers of the posts hitting drivers on the head, which actually, of course, is one of the things that effectively killed Mark Donoghue a few weeks after this race in Austria. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm a little bit surprised that made it as far as getting onto the racetrack. But just to run through quickly on that race, because it really was a crazy one. So Claudio Regazzoni went off while leading when the rain began. Tom Price took over, but only had a couple laps before he crashed. Jody Scheckter, who I think actually should have won this race, he led but pitted for wets. And had some of the pit stops were hilarious. Nicky Lauda's pit stop was, I think some of it's still happening now. So Scheckter put on a charge on his wets, got back into the lead, but by then it had dried, so he went, I'm coming back in again. So anyone that had survived, this would be the Ayrton Senna race if he'd sort of stayed out on slick sort of thing. Emerson Fittipaldi then passed James Hunt for the lead, and that's when the rain really hit. And I think it was basically a lottery as to whether you could get through the two. And the shots are amazing, because the start finish line it still looks dry, and then other parts of the track, it's the bow waves coming off the cars is ridiculous.
But through it all, Emerson
kept it on the island.
Kept it on the island, and
as did Vittorio Brambilla. Actually, he survived and should have probably. Well, he thought he should have been second, as he was the second person to complete the red flag lap, not in the barriers. But of course, they counted it back, and he ended up sixth. But he did get his revenge.
Brambilla does feature in the book.
He does
in another chapter.
I was going to say another chapter of another episode of this series. We'll come back to him. But really crazy race, and right. Well, let's get into the top three, and I would argue that some of these so far, I'd say, have been almost too crazy to be great races, like amazing spectacles and drama. But I think these top three races, well, just two of them, the middle one, we'll have a debate about that. I've got some genuinely fantastic racing. Number three, the 1999 European Grand Prix. Roger, this had everything, didn't it? Great fight at the start between the leaders and an unusual winner.
Well, you when we were discussing ranking these, were very, strong on this particular race. I think you feel quite strongly about it. And it was extraordinary, because what we've said in the headline for this particular race was, many could have won, but Johnny Herbert did win it, and that's the thing. It started off with Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Jordan leading from pole, and that's pretty extraordinary.
Surprise championship contender at the time.
At the time, well in there, and if he'd have won that particular race, it would have really strengthened his position. So he had a title bid going on. He led to 32 of 66 laps, but the weather was changeable, and there were quite a few blunders and punctures and other things that caused this sort of the chaos.
Yeah, I mean that's blunders. I mean, actually, before they even got the race started, there was a long hold on the lights, and 4 or 5 cars crept off the line and then stopped after about 20 yards.
Obviously, landmark for a number of reasons. Jackie Stewart being on the podium,
yep,
which was a pretty special moment to see, and Johnny Herbert was someone I think everyone had a lot of affection for, and I think actually he drove really well that day, and he was making calls from the cockpit, watching the weather, and he got it spot on. And it's interesting around that time. So the Malaysian Grand Prix would have been the one after that, I think.
Yeah,
So and I've interviewed him quite a few times over the years, and talking about his feet and how obviously he didn't have any feet. The feeling that he had pre-accident, post-accident was a world away, and a lot of it was through his hips and his knees. He had to then sort of feel what was happening, which is a completely different thing. And he said there's only one time that he had the old feeling that he'd had pre-accident, and that was Malaysia '99.
Which
and he doesn't know why, but it was like it suddenly all clicked, like it had pre-accident.
Yeah, I did his greatest races with him. And he gave a lot of his time actually to really go through the races and pick them out. And
really,
he picked Malaysia for that reason. And he said, "And I really wish I knew why, because
why?
He doesn't know. It's really odd,
really strange."
But that Nürburgring race, he says he saw this sort of teardrop-shaped cloud in the distance coming down to the hairpin for quite a few laps, and he went, "Yeah, this is coming here. I'm fairly convinced." And it was him that made the call on lap 35 to change to wets. Because what's interesting is that Rubens Barrichello, his teammate, comes in a couple of laps later, and they make the call as a team to stay on the dries, which of course dooms him. Then
Rubens still came through third.
He did.
So it was a brilliant team result.
Yeah, but Johnny won that race.
Yeah,
he did.
He won.
What's nice about this is that in the book there's a photograph of the 3 of them. That's Jackie Stewart in the centre with Herbert and Barrichello each side, sodden with champagne, looking very happy about the situation. I think the problem I've got here is that I don't know the second point I was going to make.
Was it that it was also the venue of Jackie Stewart's last Grand Prix win at the Nürburgring, 1973 German Grand Prix? There were a few things I wanted to pick out of this race. There's actually a fantastic battle early on between Frentzen, the 2 McLarens, and Ralf Schumacher's Williams. Frentzen, as you say, breaks down after his pit stop. Ralf Schumacher should probably actually then end up winning the race, but he has a puncture. Fisichella has a couple of goes at throwing it off the road, Giancarlo Fisichella.
Ralf Schumacher was generally very, very good that year.
That year was probably his best.
I thought so.
I think the best drivers in '99. David Coulthard threw it off, unfortunately, and that was quite a key moment in the championship fight because it's towards the end of the season. Of course, and we can't. I wouldn't say this is an essential element to a great race, but the Eddie Irvine pit stop is one of the most hilarious F1 bits you can look up on YouTube and other platforms. And the Murray Walker commentary on it. He said, "Well, I'm sure we had one here a minute ago because they only put 3 wheels on." Number 2, 1982 Monaco Grand Prix. I would argue perhaps we're not so much a great race, but we're into high drama towards the end. I mean, a ludicrous sequence of events, Roger.
The race no one wanted to win, wasn't it?
Yes.
That's the one. Yeah. And I think that's what the territory.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're watching it and
but even while it's happening, like the James Hunt commentary is brilliant on this. Well, we're all waiting at the start-finish line, waiting for a winner, and we don't seem to be getting one. It's brilliant.
So you've got Prost crashing out with 2 laps to go, which triggers this series of events of 5 minutes of Formula One madness, with Patrese leading, but then he spins at Mirabeau, and Pironi takes out the lead, but then he stops, and then De Cesaris leads in the Alfa Romeo, and he doesn't make it through. In the meantime, Patrese has got going again, and of course the fact is he wasn't disqualified, even though he was push started, but he was in a dangerous position,
that's right.
and therefore they felt that they had to sort of get him out of the way, and they pushed his car. He sort of urged it on. It started rolling down the hill, started the motor, and he went through, not realizing he'd won. He thought he'd lost, and he's on the podium there, sort of uncertain that actually the win is his.
I don't really have an awful lot to add to this one. I mean, it is crazy. 5 minutes. I mean, I think De Cesaris actually ran out of fuel before he even got to Pironi's stricken Ferrari. They both run out of fuel, hadn't they? Derek Daly sort of in the mix as well, but actually never overtook the spun Patrese, I don't think. I think Patrese got back going again, and then his Williams broke down anyway.
Yeah, I always thought it would have been nice if De Cesaris had got a win in his Grand Prix career, and that was obviously one of the few occasions when it could have fallen his way. And Derek Daly could have been a Grand Prix winner as well that day. That would have been something else. It always strikes me how big Prost's accident was. It's quite a big impact.
It was, and it's also quite a strange one because he's out of the chicane. It's pretty much under. It's almost in a straight line.
Yeah.
It's very late that he loses.
It's a really weird one.
Yeah, it's quite strange. I mean, I've never read anything suggested it was anything other than a driver error, but I suppose the rain might have been just sort of spotting it.
Greasy, I think.
A little bit greasy, yeah. I mean, Arnaud had already thrown away the lead earlier on with his own spin and stall. So yeah, it was one of those races where, now 1982, the Renaults usually set fire to themselves and stopped Arnaud and Prost winning, but this was a rare occasion where the two drivers sort of quite literally did the damage. But yeah, just a crazy finish. But it was Patrase's first World Championship Grand Prix win, wasn't it, as well? So it was still quite a nice, at the time, would have been an unusual win.
We probably ought to put a plug in for Patrase's upcoming book, because he's going to, I think we believe he's going to release one.
He is, yes. I've been in touch with the
2026.
person that's helping him write it, but I don't know how long it's going to be before it's out. Right, well, it's time for number one. I think some people do regard this as being it's a very memorable race. Quite a few people have mentioned this race to me when we talked about the project. The 1998 Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, Jordan's first win, Schumacher DC crash, all that. I mean, there's an awful lot happening. Roger, what's the thing that kind of got it to number one for you, really?
It's a wet race classic. Pile up, punch up, then the Jordan Joy. And of course, Coulthard sort of featuring on a couple of occasions. First with the initial pile-up, which is astonishing. I mean, every time I see that, I can't believe that everyone walked away without any harm.
I think the shocking thing about that is the speed at which the last two or three cars, obviously completely blinded by this, but they're still on the throttle. You can tell they plough into the wreckage rather than slide in. I would say it's quite. But the only injury, I believe, was Eddie Irvine hurting his leg getting out of the cockpit, which is quite amazing, really.
And then, of course, Coulthard's again involved when Schumacher, who's leading the race in a ball of spray, and all of the cars were like that, and Coulthard's was as well. Coulthard, I don't know whether he was mispositioned, but anyway, Schumacher came around and rammed him, lost a wheel. Found his way back to the pits, as did Coulthard, and of course went after Coulthard, absolutely livid.
Yes.
Coulthard didn't change the line.
No. What's your take on it?
I think it was just really unfortunate. It was just one of those things. I don't think anyone was at fault particularly. I think it was just that moment.
A racing incident.
I've wondered whether also, because Jean Todt and Fry marched down the pit lane beforehand to tell McLaren or get DC out of the way, and you almost wonder if that then triggered David, back off and get out of the way now sort of type thing. And they kind of were almost the architects of their own downfall, because it's kind of not Michael's fault in a way, because he's just in a ball of spray, but also David, he holds his line, he's on right over the right hand side. Yes. It's just one of those. I mean, it actually demonstrates Alain Prost's point about that's actually why racing in the rain is dangerous. It's nothing to do with grip, it's to do with visibility.
Yeah. We all know David is obviously extremely eloquent, and I think he's a great broadcaster these days. He's also a really good interview, and he's also fascinating when you talk to him about other drivers. And after that famous bust up in the pits, basically Bernie got him and Schumacher together the next race for a private conversation, and they kind of sorted it out between them. But DC said to Michael, "Are you never wrong? Have you never been wrong?" And Michael sort of looked at him and nonplussed, as if he didn't really understand the question. And he said, "Not as far as I can remember, no."
And this should have been one of his great wet weather wins. I mean, he was already half a minute ahead. We should say so after that. I mean, Damien Hill.
We got another Schumacher doing sort of a not dissimilar sort of thing, in the belief that he should become.
Well, yeah, I have a bit of an axe to grind about this race, because Damien Hill was faster in qualifying. He did the early part. He was miles quicker than Ralf Schumacher in the early part of the race. Ralph did start chipping away at it in the middle, but the only reason he was up behind Damien in the first place is because of the safety car, because Giancarlo Fisichella has a horrendous accident hitting the back of a Minardi, which turns the Benetton into a boat. And that's the only reason that Ralph is really kind of there. So this whole, is all, letting Damon win. I don't really buy it.
No, and I also think Damon was showing his maturity there as well by saying, if you want us to win this race, keep it as it is, because he knew that there was going to be a risk if they went wheel to wheel that they could throw this away. And this meant everything to the team. And yes, you could say it was a selfish call from Damon to make sure that, I think he was doing what any top line driver would have done in that situation.
Yeah, I agree. And also remember, Ralph was only in his second F1 season at this point, and had already a bit of a reputation for some wild moments. Yeah. So it was, I mean, I know that Michael was upset and advised Ralph to leave, didn't he? It's one of the reasons he went to Williams for the following year. But anyway, there we go. So that's it. The number one. Are you happy with the selection? Is this the number one you picked? What was the race that you think?
I think it's a great selection. I would argue the race we were talking about pre-recording, the 07 Nürburgring race, which was that one where Markus Winkelhock led in the Spiker.
I don't think that's in our list at all. Anyway.
What month?
Was it 2007? Was it a European or German?
It was a European GP,
race.
I think it was called. Yeah.
And
I was there. I was very lucky. I was talking to our producer today, Jason. Thanks to him,
don't give him any credit. God, what are you doing?
I know, I'm terrible. But
he's supposed to be one of those silent people in the background.
He allowed me to stand at the back of the commentary booth where the great Murray Walker made his return on Radio 5 Live for the day, and that's another story. But so much happened, and there was a point where Lewis Hamilton got craned away while he was still in the car. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think it was his first retirement from a Grand Prix, wasn't it, pretty much?
Yeah, and that was utter chaos. And it rained like that sort of deluge that you think, well, that's just stop the race. It's just like horrendous, So that was a big one. And a couple other ones, they may be on other lists.
Yeah, that one isn't. That's
no.
Right, I have to do a new book, Roger.
Title deciders. So this might be the Vettel Brazil one. Is that 2012?
Yes, we will be visiting
that?
that one in.
That's a what the I'd say. And the 2010 title decider is another what the. I think just seeing Fernando Alonso caught up behind Vitaly Petrov for 40 laps, not being able to went past.
I would say that's neither dramatic nor great, but is somehow significant in some way. Yeah. Right, well, that's the end then. So thank you very much, Damien Smith and Roger Smith. I'll just go through that list. 10 is the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix, 9 the 2010 Turkish Grand Prix, 8 2003 Australian Grand Prix, 7 the 1978 South African Grand Prix, 6 the 1976 British Grand Prix, although really we should say, and the arguments afterwards, shouldn't we, before and after. 5 is the 1964 Belgian Grand Prix, 4 is the 1975 British Grand Prix, and then the top 3, the 1999 European Grand Prix, 1982 Monaco Grand Prix, and our winner in this episode, the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. Let us know what we got right and wrong. Do you agree with Damien? Should we have included 2007 Nürburgring? Hasn't made it anywhere into this series, so that's an interesting one to talk about. Can you drop me an email, kevin.turner@autosport.com. That's it for now. We'll be back soon with another Autosport podcast.